long, long time ago. I was an idiot boy then.
Yes, you were. The other idiot boy's downstairs having himself...
Are you a fan of the historical epics and colorful musicals of the 1960s? Join us as we dive back to that glorious era. Here are 20 best-gone actors from the 1960s and why they fell off the radar.
I'll get a terrace apartment. Life can be...
Number 20, George Chakiris. What better way to kick off a list of stars who fell off the radar than with a man who won an Oscar and disappeared not long after? Remember George Chakiris? He's best known for his role as Bernardo in the 1961 film adaptation of West Side Story. His performance was beyond stellar. He had the charismatic stage presence, fluid dancing skills. Even better, he had the ability to bring depth to a character often seen as a straightforward antagonist. To nobody's surprise, this performance earned him an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. However, despite his impressive performance, his career did not maintain the same momentum in the years that followed this major success. Now, a couple of factors could be blamed for this decline. First of which is the age-long problem of typecasting. Chakiris found himself typecast as a dancer and ethnic tough guy figure after West Side Story. This type of casting limited his ability to take on a variety of future roles that could have solidified his position as an actor to be taken seriously. We imagine this could have been a constraint on his career growth. By the late 1960s, Hollywood began moving away from the big-budget musicals that had prompted Chakiris' rise in the industry. All of a sudden, the industry was evolving to favor grittier and more experimental films. By catering to the ever-changing taste of the audience, there were reduced opportunities for actors from musical backgrounds. Sure, Chakiris was a talented dancer and possessed a brooding screen presence. Still, he was not considered a dramatic powerhouse. His work outside West Side Story had received lukewarm reviews, so it was challenging for him to find critical success outside his celebrated performance as Bernardo. We could also blame it on his style and appearance. While it was initially thought for the 1950s and early 60s, it didn't entirely match the counterculture, edgy trends that emerged in the late 60s and 70s. This era leaned more toward actors who embodied realism and had rugged, unconventional looks. With this fact, you can see that Chakiris was at a disadvantage. So while it looked like he simply fell off the face of the earth, the truth is, he tried to keep busy. As his Hollywood opportunities dwindled, Chakiris turned to roles in European films and eventually made the transition to television. While this allowed him to continue working, these projects were generally smaller in scope and impact. Worst of all, it limited his visibility with American audiences.
Mom, but I ate all your bacon.
You have a very long face today.
Oh, yeah?
Number 19, Sue Lyon. Who can forget Sue Lyon, the young starlet who rose to fame after her unforgettable portrayal of the title character in Stanley Kubrick's Lolita? This movie will forever have its place as one of the most iconic ones of the early 1960s. Would it be wrong to say that Sue Lyon played a huge role when it comes to the lasting cultural legacy of the 1962 film? We mean, at just 14 years old at the time, Lyon's performance as Lolita was provocative, unsettling, and yet powerful. It embodied the complex character from Nabokov's novel in a way that captivated audiences and critics alike. She gave everything that character needed to give. So whatever happened to her? After such a successful breakthrough role, why did it seem like she disappeared? As you might have guessed, her career declined significantly despite her attempts to achieve the same level of prominence. The most likely reason why this happened was the somewhat controversial nature of the Lolita role. A young girl playing such a role might have cast a long shadow over her career. Lyon's role as Lolita might have also typecast her. Some accounts suggest that Hollywood was unable to see past such an iconic performance. Producers and casting directors had reportedly boxed her into similarly provocative and troubled young female roles. And it got worse. Eventually, she aged out of the types of roles that she would have needed to maintain her success. After Lolita, Lyon appeared in several films, such as The Night of the Iguana in 1964. This wasn't too bad, but it only got worse as she struggled to find another high-profile project. Many of the roles she accepted later in her career like those in Evel Knievel in 1971 or Crash in 1977, were in lower quality or B-movie productions that didn't bolster her reputation or advance her career meaningfully. At some point, Lyon's personal life became a source of significant public scrutiny. From her marriages to her personal hardships, nothing escaped the news. Over time, the personal challenges seemed to take a toll on her, and she became increasingly withdrawn from Hollywood. And of course, this sealed her fate as it further reduced her visibility and opportunities. Number 18, Carol Lynley. When it comes to the perfect blend of beauty, charm, and vulnerability, the talented Carol Lynley had it all. She achieved early success in the late 1950s and early 60s with memorable roles in films like Blue Denim in 1959 and The Light in the Forest in 1958. She also continued to appear in a variety of projects, with her star power reaching a peak during the 1960s. However, despite her talent and screen presence, Lynley's career saw a noticeable decline after that time. Perhaps the first reason why her career did not pan out as big as people thought was timing. You see, Lynley's career began during the waning days of the studio system. For all of its faults, the studio system historically helped to cultivate and maintain the careers of many actors. As the industry moved into the 1970s, there was an increased focus on realism and a subsequent call for more unconventional actors. This shift meant that actresses like Lynley, who had been cast in more traditionally glamorous roles, were left at a disadvantage in an industry looking for edgier talent. Before her unexpected decline, Carol Lynley had often been cast in roles that leaned on her youthful beauty by often portraying her as a damsel in distress. This typecasting limited her ability to showcase a broader acting range. The fact that she was not given room to diversify ultimately kept her from developing the versatility that could have helped her adapt to Hollywood's evolving landscape by the start of the 1970s. Because her roles tended to emphasize innocence or naivete, her persona became even more difficult to sustain as she aged. Despite her early successes, Lynley's career in the late 1960s and 1970s did not see the same level of critical or commercial success. Though she worked steadily, many of her later films, such as The Poseidon Adventure in 1972, did not establish her as a serious leading actress. In retrospect, Carol Lynley's career trajectory highlights the challenges that many actresses faced in the transition from the classical Hollywood era to the new Hollywood movement. While her career faltered after the 1960s, we believe Lynley left a legacy in films that will continue to evoke a sense of mid-century Hollywood charm and beauty.
Orans, not this. Go round. Damascus, Orans.
Number 17, Peter O'Toole. No thanks to his now iconic role as T.E. Lawrence in Lawrence of Arabia, Peter O'Toole remains one of the most revered actors in cinematic history. The 1962 film made him an international star and earned him his very first Academy Award nomination. His charismatic screen presence, piercing blue eyes, and intense, sometimes flamboyant performances made him a unique figure in film. He was right on track to dominate the era's category of leading men, but for some reason, it turned out to be a case of fluctuating successes and career difficulties. O'Toole's breakout as Lawrence was so defining that it proved hard for him to break away from its shadow. This typecasting limited his opportunities to showcase a wider range of roles in an industry increasingly favoring more naturalistic performances. So, if you ever wondered why wasn't he everywhere, now you have your answer. It also didn't help that the 1970s ushered in a new era of realism in Hollywood. With the emergence of the New Hollywood movement, films became grittier, and the stories centered around flawed, often working-class anti-heroes. O'Toole's theatrical style and regal screen presence, which defined his early career, did not seamlessly fit into this new mold. It rather favored new faces like Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, and Jack Nicholson. While O'Toole continued to work, the era's preference for method acting and hyperrealism drastically limited the roles available to him. Perhaps it would be wrong to rule out his off-screen persona as well. At some point, his hard-partying lifestyle and battles with alcoholism took center stage in his life. As you can imagine, it affected his personal and professional life. A good reputation is everything. If he had been tagged as unreliable, it most certainly would have deterred some directors and studios from offering him leading roles in high-stakes projects. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, O'Toole appeared in a variety of films, but many were less successful and critically inconsistent. Films like Man of La Mancha and Caligula failed to capture the critical acclaim or box office success of his earlier works.
Next. What'd you do over the weekend?
Nothing. I stayed home waiting for you.
I try to make it believe me. I just couldn't get away. But there's good news tonight. Yes?
Number 16, Pamela Tiffin. Might not be a name you would recall, but Tiffin had a bright, albeit brief, moment of stardom in the early 1960s. At the time, she was loved for her beauty, charm, and of course, that impeccable comedic timing. With such attributes, you can be sure that she found success in light comedies and romantic roles. Her most memorable performances were in the 1961 film titled 1, 2, 3, where she played a naive Southern beauty opposite James Cagney, and The Pleasure Seekers in 1964. However, despite the immense promise her early career showed, it faded as the 1970s approached. There were a few key reasons for this though, one of which is the reason she rose to fame in the first place. You see, Tiffin was frequently cast in comedies and romantic roles. These roles leaned heavily on her looks and bubbly personality rather than her acting range. While she excelled in these parts, the roles did not offer her the depth needed to showcase versatility. Hollywood producers no doubt saw her as the archetype of the beautiful and somewhat ditzy ingenue. If this was the case, then her career would be in a bumpy ride. By the time the audiences began to move away from the glossy romantic comedies and lighthearted fare that had been popular in the early part of the decade, Tiffin would find herself out of demand. In the late 1960s, Tiffin began to work in Italy, where she appeared in several Italian films, from The Archangel in 1969 to Torture Me But Kill Me With Kisses in 1968. She continued to act in roles she did find. However, her work in European cinema did not give her the same level of visibility or critical acclaim as her earlier Hollywood films. By the mid-1970s, Tiffin was done trying. She began to withdraw from acting and focused more on her personal life. She married twice and eventually chose to leave the industry entirely. Her decision to prioritize her personal life over her career meant that she largely stepped away from the public eye and from Hollywood altogether. Unlike some actors who made successful returns after career lulls, Tiffin did not have a comeback moment. After her move to Italy, she largely disappeared from Hollywood, leaving behind only a modest filmography. Her career in film essentially ended by the mid-1970s, with her final film appearance being in The Fifth Chord. While her time in the spotlight was relatively short-lived, Tiffin is still remembered for her roles in classic 1960 comedies, which have since become part of the era's cinematic charm.
I got his diploma. Yes, but he worked hard. Made quite a bit of money.
Well, if it's all gone, I'm sure there'll always be a man to take care of me. And you don't need a diploma for that.
Number 15, Jean Seberg. Jean Seberg is often remembered for a lot of things. For one, she was an active supporter of civil rights causes like the Black Panther Party, and then there was the subsequent surveillance and smear campaign harassment by the FBI. All of these are common things that come to mind when her name comes up, but we believe none should overshadow the fact that she was a talented actress and a symbol of the French New Wave. Seberg first gained international recognition with her role in Jean-Luc Godard's Breathless. The 1960 film established her as a modern, rebellious figure and an unconventional beauty. The role not only defined her career, but also cemented her image as a cultural icon. However, Seberg's acting career suffered significantly in the years that followed. Unfortunately, Seberg's early success in Breathless led to her being closely associated with the French New Wave and characters who embodied a kind of youthful, free-spirited cool. This typecasting made it challenging for her to find roles outside of this image. This limitation constrained her options as an actress, especially as she got older. She also became deeply involved in political causes in the late 1960s. From vital civil rights movements to supporting the Black Panther Party, she wasn't afraid to leverage her platform for the causes she believed in. Unfortunately, this activism made her a target of the FBI's COINTELPRO program. The program greatly discredited her and harmed her public image. the FBI spread false stories about her, including a damaging rumor about her personal life. These controversies, fueled by media scrutiny, affected both her mental health and her professional reputation. Sadly, it took a toll on her mental health, which in turn affected her ability to consistently work in film. Though Seberg initially found great success in French cinema, her career in Hollywood was inconsistent. Many of her Hollywood films did not reach the level of critical acclaim or commercial success that could have helped her career in the US. By the 1970s, she was only appearing in lower-profile films. The 1970s film industry also became more focused on male-driven stories and method acting, so it did not leave her with many roles that aligned with her previous image or skills. In time, she withdrew from the Hollywood industry as it was increasingly becoming a difficult place for her to navigate.
Pardon, madame. Il n'y a pas de mal. Elle redescend, vite!
Number 14, Capucine. Elegant beauty, sophistication, poise, these were words that best described Capucine. She first gained attention in the late 1950s and early 1960s with roles in films like 1963's The Pink Panther, where she starred alongside Peter Sellers and David Niven. She followed that up with another impressive role in the 1965 film What's New, Pussycat? She was especially popular in Europe, creating a segue to Hollywood. Despite this significant momentum, her career slowed down shortly after that. By the turn of the late 60s, it seemed like she was a distant dream. Capucine was often cast in roles that leaned on her beauty and elegance. She perfected the art of portraying aristocratic or sophisticated characters. She had that unique presence, but it would only turn out to be her undoing. She was unable to explore more complex or varied characters as her acting range had been limited. As a result, her screen persona remained relatively static, and her roles tended to be supporting or more secondary. And with a greater call for grittier, more realistic storytelling and unconventional characters, Capucine's refined European style didn't fully align with the new wave of Hollywood films. At this time, more priority was given to anti-heroes and more intense, raw performances. Sadly, this meant that the time of her screen presence, which once symbolized classic glamour, became less in demand. After her Hollywood career started to decline, Capucine found more work in European films and lower-budget productions. While this kept her working, many of these projects did not reach international audiences or critical acclaim. She appeared in various genre films, such as horror and Italian comedies, but these roles did not restore her earlier status or offer her the high-profile exposure she once enjoyed. We mentioned earlier that Capucine's beauty and presence made her memorable. However, her acting skills might have left more to be desired. The truth is, her acting skills were sometimes critiqued as being limited. If this was the case, then you can see how it restricted her versatility on screen. To worsen things, English was not her first language, so it posed challenges for her. Perhaps this was the problem and not her acting skills.
If you're all white in America.
Number 13, Richard Beymer. American actor, filmmaker, and artist Richard Beymer is best known for his leading role as Tony in the classic 1961 musical West Side Story. Born in Avoca, Iowa, Beymer moved to Los Angeles with his family and began acting in his teens. His career began with small roles in films and television. He quickly gained attention with his good looks and talent, landing roles in a variety of films and television shows in the 1950s and 1960s. That breakthrough came with West Side Story, where he played Tony, the male lead who falls in love with Maria, played by Natalie Wood. This love story was amidst the racial tensions and gang rivalries between the Jets and the Sharks in New York City. West Side Story became one of the most beloved musicals in film history and won 10 Academy Awards. By doing so, it solidified Beymer's place in cinema. But what about lasting success? Why is his name not as loud as many of his contemporaries? The thing is, Richard Beymer's acting career did experience a significant decline after the 1960s. For one, many believed that this role as Tony pigeonholed him into a certain type of sensitive leading man role. Despite West Side Story's success, Beymer himself reportedly felt unhappy with his performance and wasn't fully satisfied with his experience on the film. Critics also gave him mixed reviews for his portrayal of Tony, suggesting he lacked the intensity that other actors brought to their roles. This self-criticism, combined with a lukewarm critical response, may have contributed to his reluctance to pursue similar high-profile projects while also affecting his confidence and choices. A low confidence was the worst thing that Beymer could have experienced because what came next was not going to be kind. As you know, the 1970s brought major shifts in the film industry, with a new move toward realism, anti-heroes, and edgier storytelling as part of the New Hollywood movement. As actors like Al Pacino, Dustin Hoffman, and Robert De Niro became the new faces of American cinema, talents like Beymer were forced into the background. And without the confidence to pursue other acting projects, his career was no doubt headed for the rocks. Over time, Beymer became interested in other aspects of creative work, such as filmmaking, photography, and writing. In the 1970s, he began directing documentaries and experimental films, a path that allowed him more artistic freedom and being away from mainstream Hollywood.
Long, long time ago. I was an idiot boy then.
Yes, you were. The other idiot boy's downstairs having a...
Number 12, Dorothy Malone. Dorothy Malone was an American actress known for her work in classic Hollywood films of the 1940s and 1950s. Moving on from that, she went on to carry an Emmy-winning role on television in the late 1960s. Interestingly, Malone started her career as a supporting actress in the 1940s. At the time, she was still a college student, so she landed only small parts in RKO and Warner Brothers films. By the mid-1950s, Malone changed her image and took on more glamorous, dramatic roles. Her career breakthrough came in the 1956 film Written on the Wind. Here, she played the reckless, troubled Mary Lee Hadley. Her portrayal of Mary Lee, a wild heiress with destructive desires, won her the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. This role showcased her range and marked a shift from the girl-next-door parts she had previously played to more complex, mature roles. Her beauty and ability to portray flawed or troubled characters helped her maintain a career that would span nearly 5 decades. In the 1960s, Malone transitioned to television and starred as Constance Mackenzie on Peyton Place. In the 1960s, Malone transitioned to television and starred as Constance Mackenzie on Peyton Place. From 1964 to 1968, she was a key figure in one of TV's first primetime soap operas. Her role as the complicated mother in a small, scandal-ridden town brought her to a new generation of fans and earned her an Emmy. Her work on Peyton Place solidified her status as a television star and expanded her audience beyond film. Sadly, Malone's career slowed down after this. You see, Peyton Place was one of the first successful primetime soap operas, but by the time it ended in 1968, television content was shifting, and it became difficult for Malone to find another role of similar stature. The end of Peyton Place marked the end of her most prominent work in mainstream entertainment. Like many actresses of her generation, there was now limited opportunities available to her as she aged. Known for her glamorous and strong character roles in the 1950s, she struggled to find parts that matched her talents and her established screen image, especially as the 1970s brought a trend toward youth-focused stories.
No! Grey Abbey! It's I who repudiate you.
Number 11, Barbara Steele. Barbara Steele is a British actress and producer best known for her work in the horror genre, especially during the 1960s. The 86-year-old actress was born in Birkenhead, England. Steele's distinctively dark and intense looks helped her become an icon in the gothic horror genre, especially in Italian horror cinema, where she starred in several iconic films. Steele first rose to prominence with her role in Black Sunday, as directed by Italian filmmaker Mario Bava. She played both a witch and her descendant. This role established her as a horror film legend. Her other notable films include The Pit and the Pendulum in 1961, The Horrible Dr. Hitchcock in 1962, and Castle of Blood in 1964. Steele became known for her haunting presence, often portraying mysterious or tormented characters. However, her acting career did decline somewhat after the 1960s. During the 60s, Steele was at her peak, especially in Italian and American Gothic horror. Her unique look and intense performances made her a horror icon. However, as the horror genre evolved and the gothic style of her earlier films became less popular, Steele found fewer prominent roles available to her. In the 1970s, Steele appeared in a few films, such as Shivers, directed by David Cronenberg, but her screen presence gradually lessened. Eventually, she set her sights on something else. By the 1980s and 1990s, she was fully immersed in the world of behind-the-scenes production. She helped produce several television projects, including the American adaptation of Queer as Folk. Although her acting roles became more sporadic, Steele occasionally returned to the screen, keeping her cult status alive among horror fans. In 2012, she even made a notable return in The Butterfly Room. While this did not resurge her acting career, it helped remind audiences of her impact on the genre.
Why didn't you write me, Hoyt?
I wanted to buy them back before you got home. I was just waiting to sell a few stories. You just got back.
Number 10, Troy Donahue. Remember this American actor and heartthrob of the late 1950s and early 1960s? Probably not. Troy Donahue was renowned for his roles in romantic dramas and for his good looks. In fact, both attributes made him a pop culture icon of the era. He was born Merle Johnson Jr. on January 27, 1936, in New York City. Donahue gained fame with his role in the 1959 film A Summer Place. By portraying the role of a troubled teenager in a romantic storyline, he positioned himself to be the next symbol of youthful romance. In the early 1960s, Donahue continued to star in romantic dramas and TV series. These include Parish in 1961 and Rome Adventure in 1962. Top that off with a couple of TV appearances like that of Surfside 6. He was well on his way to being a top-rated TV star. His wholesome, blonde surfer image made him especially popular with young audiences and a frequent subject of teen magazine covers. However, as the Hollywood landscape changed and interest in his style of romance films declined, Donahue's career faltered quite unexpectedly. Well, it wasn't that unexpected if you factor in the change that came with the 1970s. As Hollywood and its audience taste shifted towards edgier, more complex narratives and characters, actors like Donahue, who were typecast as romantic leads, were unable to find new roles. Donahue's on-screen persona didn't translate well to the more realistic films of the 1970s. At some point, Donahue also struggled with personal issues like substance abuse and financial troubles. While he continued to act in smaller roles in low-budget films and occasional television appearances, he never regained his former level of success.
It was a rather noisy exit.
Arranged by you?
But of course. She met with Mr. Helm for only one reason, to betray you.
Number 9, Elke Sommer. Elke Sommer is a German actress, singer, and artist who gained international fame not just for her roles in Hollywood films, but also for her glamorous screen presence. Back in her prime, she was renowned for her beauty, wit, and versatility. Sommer became a prominent European star and later successfully transitioned to American cinema, achieving fame in both comedic and dramatic roles. The 84-year-old actress was born Elke Schletz on November 5, 1940 in Berlin, Germany. Sommer started her film career in German and Italian films in the late 1950s. So great was her finesse that she eventually attracted the attention of Hollywood. Leveraging the opportunity, she moved to the United States and appeared in films like The Prize alongside Paul Newman, A Shot in the Dark, and The Art of Love alongside James Garner. Sommer's talent for comedy made her a standout, especially in Blake Edwards' films, where her natural charm made her a favorite in Hollywood during the 1960s. However, as Hollywood taste shifted in the 1970s, Sommer's popularity in the American film industry waned. She found fewer leading roles in Hollywood. To worsen things, new stars started to emerge. As such, many foreign-born actresses faced the challenge of maintaining long-term success in Hollywood. After the 1960s, Sommer began appearing more frequently in European films and television. Thankfully, she had managed to retain a solid fan base. Eventually, she took on roles in lower-budget horror films and thrills like Barren Blood in 1972, as well as Lisa and the Devil in 1974. Aside from acting, Sommer focused on her passion for painting, eventually gaining recognition for her work as an artist. In time, she was showcased at exhibitions all around the world. Though her Hollywood stardom faded after the 1960s, she remained active in entertainment and the arts. Because of this, she is still fondly remembered as a symbol of 1960s glamour and international cinema.
Pretty strong girl, Merritt.
Not really. No girl is when it comes to love. What she thinks is love.
From Hollywood stardom to a life of religious devotion, this is Dolores Hart. She was born Dolores Hicks on October 20, 1938 in Chicago, Illinois. With a little bit of luck, she made her film debut opposite Elvis Presley in the 1957 film Loving You. She became an instant sensation. We mean, how many ladies can boast of being Presley's first on-screen kiss? Even better, her chemistry with Presley was beyond perfect. Now renowned for her beauty and charm, she went on to appear in other high-profile films like King Creole with Presley again in 1958, Where the Boys Are in 1960, and Francis of Assisi in 1961, where she portrayed Saint Clair. Everything was going perfectly, but then there was a twist. In 1963, at the height of her career, she made the surprising decision to leave Hollywood and join the Abbey of Regina Laudis. This was a Benedictine monastery in Bethlehem, Connecticut. By 1970, she took her final vows as a nun and adopted the name Mother Dolores. Since then, Mother Dolores has lived a life of prayer and contemplation. What can we say? Not everyone who is a star actually wants the position. Mother Dolores is just one of them. Interestingly, she has also remained connected to the film industry. In time, she became the only nun to be an Academy member and has since made the occasional appearances to discuss her unique life story. She was featured in the 2012 Oscar-nominated documentary God is the Bigger Elvis, which explored her decision to leave Hollywood for monastic life. Wouldn't you say her journey from Hollywood to a monastery is an inspirational tale of personal fulfillment and dedication? We totally see why she remains a respected figure in both the religious and film communities.
Nice.
Nice?
Well, I've never actually been through there, but that's the way it always seemed to me.
Number 7. Michael Sarrazin. Not a big name, but this Canadian actor was known for his striking looks and ability to play sensitive, unconventional characters. Born Jacques-Michel André Sarrazin in Quebec City, Canada, Sarrazin rose to prominence with his role in They Shoot Horses, Don't They? The dark and intense 1969 film was centered on the Depression-era dance marathon. His portrayal of a drifting young man alongside Jane Fonda earned him critical acclaim and helped establish him as a compelling actor. Sarrazin's career truly flourished in the late 1960s and early 1970s. You see, he went on to star in a range of films, including The Flim Flam Man with George C. Scott and Sometimes a Great Notion with Paul Newman. He was noted for his brooding style, offbeat presence, and roles as an anti-hero. This appealed to audiences drawn to the counterculture vibe of the time. His unconventional look and thoughtful performances made him a unique screen presence. However, Sarrazin's career began to decline after the early 1970s. He struggled to find roles as Hollywood's preferences shifted, and the popularity of the introspective, counterculture-oriented films that had suited him began to wane. During the 1980s and 1990s, Sarrazin appeared mostly in low-budget films and television. As you can imagine, he was unable to regain the momentum of his early career. He took on roles in various TV series, including guest appearances, but never found another breakout role that matched his earlier success. Although he may have fallen off the mainstream radar after his peak, his legacy endures through his contributions to a transformative period in film.
What do you want? What do you want, honey?
I got promoted today.
That's fine. You're going home.
Here's my report card.
I'll look at it later. Go on home. I told you not to come around here when I'm working.
Number 6. Patty Duke. Patty Duke was an American actress who rose to fame as a child star in the 1950s and 1960s. Born Anna Marie Duke in New York City, she began her career in television commercials and early TV shows. Duke's breakthrough came when she starred as Helen Keller in the Broadway play The Miracle Worker, and then when she reprised the role in the 1962 film adaptation. That role earned her an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress at just 16 years old. Following her Oscar win, Duke starred in The Patty Duke Show from 1963 to 1966. It was a popular sitcom in which she played identical cousins with contrasting personalities. Her work on the show made her a beloved figure and showcased her versatility as an actress. However, as she transitioned into adulthood, she faced significant personal and professional challenges. For one, she starred in the cult film Valley of the Dolls in 1967, where she attempted to break away from her clean-cut image. Sadly, the film received mixed reviews, and Duke struggled to escape her child star persona. The 1970s were a tumultuous period for Duke. She revealed that she had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. This condition contributed to her struggles with mood swings, substance abuse, and erratic behavior. These personal battles affected her career and led to a decline in high-profile roles. Some would argue that her career never completely fell off the radar, as she continued to work steadily in television and film throughout her life. But the truth is, none came with the same mainstream visibility as she had in the 1960s.
I'm going away. I'm leaving Spain.
You mean I scared you that much?
I'm serious.
Are you really afraid I'm going to try to rope you into marrying me?
No, it's not that simple.
Number 5. Yvette Mimieux. Nobody quite portrayed ethereal, fragile, or mysterious characters like Yvette Mimieux. The gorgeous American actress was known for her delicate beauty, and her distinctive, almost otherworldly presence helped her stand out. Born in Los Angeles, California, Mimieux rose to fame with her role as Weena the Eloy Woman in the 1960 film The Time Machine. Throughout the 1960s, Mimieux starred in a number of notable films, including Where the Boys Are, The Light in the Piazza, Toys in the Attic, and Joy in the Morning. She often played characters with a haunting vulnerability or innocence, which became a hallmark of her screen image. Mimieux was also one of the first actresses to address more serious social themes in film. Notable examples was the sexual assault in The Time Travelers and her take on mental health in The Light in the Piazza. However, by the late 1960s and into the 1970s, Mimieux's career began to slow down. Much of this decline can be attributed to typecasting. Her ethereal, ingenue image became harder to sustain as she got older. That said, she reportedly struggled to find roles that allowed her to break away from that persona. Although her mainstream film career declined, Mimieux continued to work in television and made-for-TV movies throughout the 1970s and 1980s. Yvette Mimieux largely kept a low profile in her later years, choosing a private life away from Hollywood. She passed away on January 17, 2022, at the age of 80. Mimieux remains remembered as a unique and beautiful presence on screen, emblematic of 1960s Hollywood. If you made it this far, do hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any updates from us.
Kahuna.
Who else?
Oh, you must be kidding. He's twice your age.
Oh, I know. Oedipus and all that. It's called a father complex.
Number 4. James Darren. Born James William Ercolani on June 8, 1936 in Philadelphia, James Darren had a good run during the 1950s and 60s. The American actor, singer, and director is fondly remembered for his hit music career and his later work in television. With his classic good looks, charming personality, and talent for both acting and singing, Darren became a popular figure, especially with young audiences. Darren's early breakthrough came in the late 1950s when he starred in Gidget in 1959. His role as Moondoggie, the romantic lead opposite Sandra Dee, was a huge success. It was so successful that it led to 2 sequels, Gidget Goes Hawaiian in 1961 and Gidget Goes to Rome in 1963. All 3 roles cemented his status as a teen idol of the era. Around this time, Darren also pursued a singing career, releasing hit singles like Goodbye Cruel World and Her Royal Majesty. His smooth voice and pop appeal made him a successful recording artist, with his music charting well and adding to his popularity. In addition to Gidget, Darren starred in several other films, including The Guns of Navarone. In this one, he played a more dramatic role as a Greek resistance fighter. However, as the teen movie genre waned in popularity and Hollywood's focus shifted to grittier fare in the late 1960s, Darren's film career slowed. As such, Darren turned his attention to television and directing in the 1970s. So if you thought he disappeared, then you should know that he didn't. He just simply took on more behind-the-scenes roles. Well, this was until the 1990s, when he starred as Vic Fontaine, a holographic lounge singer in Star Trek Deep Space Nine. His role as Fontaine, the suave 1960s-style crooner, became iconic within the Star Trek fan base, but it wasn't enough to truly match his earlier fame. In addition to acting, Darren has directed episodes of various television shows, including Hunter and T.J. Hooker. Although his film career declined after the 1960s, he remained active in music and television.
We have started and finished, Buster. And now for an encore, get an earful of the following. I'll admit you're a very sharp-looking guy, and you certainly have that proverbial gift of...
Number 3. Stella Stevens. Stella Stevens is an American actress, model, and director known for her appearances in television series. Well, many will definitely remember her as a Playboy model. She was born Estelle Caro Eggleston in Yazoo City, Mississippi, but grew up in Memphis, Tennessee. With her striking beauty, comedic talent, and versatility, Stevens became a prominent figure in Hollywood, especially noted for her work in comedy, drama, and action films. Stevens' big break came with her performance in Lil Abner in 1959. Soon after, she signed a contract with Paramount Pictures and gained further attention in Say One For Me. This was a performance that won her a Golden Globe for Most Promising Newcomer. Her career continued to rise with films like Too Late Blues in 1961, The Courtship of Eddie's Father in 1963, and the comedy classic The Nutty Professor in 1963 as well. In The Nutty Professor, she played Stella Purdy, the love interest of Jerry Lewis's dual characters, and her role became one of her most iconic performances. Throughout the 1960s and 1970s, Stevens was widely known as a sex symbol, often cast in glamorous, romantic, or comedic roles. She also gained fame as a Playboy model, appearing multiple times in the magazine. However, she often pushed for more serious and complex roles, seeking to expand beyond her image as a blonde bombshell. As her career in mainstream film began to decline in the 70s, Stevens turned her attention to television movies and directing. She directed several projects in the 1970s and 1980s, including a documentary and a feature film. While her directing work didn't gain as much recognition as her acting, we believe she was just happy to be working. In later years, Stevens moved to smaller roles in film and television, but her presence in Hollywood and her roles in classic films like The Nutty Professor and The Poseidon Adventure had given her a lasting legacy. So, while she never reached the superstardom of some of her contemporaries, Stella Stevens remains a dynamic, talented actress with a lasting impact on 1960s and 1970s American pop culture.
Will you go get me a suit someplace? I'm gonna get some shut-eye before the bed cools.
Get your suit, Rocky. I ain't got any dough.
So?
Number 2. Sal Mineo. Born Salvatore Mineo Jr. on January 10, 1939, Sal Mineo was an American actor, singer, and cultural icon. But before the world would know him as the perfect picture of troubled and sensitive youth, he was just a boy in the Bronx, New York City, born to Sicilian immigrant parents. Mineo is most famous for his role as Plato in the 1955 cult classic Rebel Without a Cause. In this film, he starred alongside big names like James Dean and Natalie Wood. Interestingly, his performance as the emotionally fragile Plato earned him an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor. Because of this, he's often remembered as one of Hollywood's first teen idols. You would not be wrong to call this a breakout role because, after Rebel Without a Cause, Mineo enjoyed significant success. When it came to roles that tapped into a high degree of vulnerability and intensity, Mineo was your guy. He appeared in Giant, which also starred James Dean, later in 1956, and then Exodus in 1960. His role as Dov Landau, a young Holocaust survivor in Exodus, showcased his dramatic range and solidified his reputation as a talented actor. This role attracted a second Academy Award nomination. However, Mineo's career declined in the 1960s as he struggled to find roles beyond the troubled youth typecasting. Hollywood's evolving taste and his own attempts to break away from his youthful image made it difficult for him to maintain his earlier popularity. As he grew older, it became harder to find roles that suited his established image, and he struggled to transition into adult roles that matched his talent and earlier acclaim. Directors and casting agents struggled to see him outside his early image, limiting the range of roles available to him. Additionally, he was one of the few openly gay actors. In an era of widespread discrimination, his sexuality likely limited his opportunities in a homophobic industry. In the later 1960s and 1970s, Mineo turned to theater, where he found some success with productions like Fortune and Men's Eyes, and also P.S. Your Cat is Dead. Despite his efforts to re-establish himself, he remained largely out of the Hollywood spotlight and was unable to revive his film career fully. Unlike some on this list, Sal Mineo was unable to have a comeback moment. While still trying to rebuild his career, Mineo was tragically murdered in 1976 at the age of 37. Thankfully, his time out of the limelight hasn't dented his legacy. He is still remembered as a talented and pioneering actor whose early performances left a lasting impact on Hollywood.
A very difficult woman.
Perhaps so, Your Majesty.
But you'll observe care that head shall never be higher than mine. When I shall sit, you shall sit. When I shall kneel, you shall kneel.
Number 1. Deborah Kerr. Deborah Kerr was a British actress who was celebrated for her elegance, versatility, and poise. Born on September 30th, 1921 in Helensburgh, Scotland, she rose to fame as one of Hollywood's leading ladies in the 1940s through the 1960s. Known for her refined beauty and grace, Kerr became famous for portraying complex, sophisticated women. While she did display a remarkable range, she excelled in romance, drama, comedy, and even adventure films. Kerr began her career in British cinema. In 1940, she made her film debut in Contraband, then went on to achieve more prominence following her role in the 1943 film The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp. Her Hollywood breakthrough even came with The Hucksters. She starred opposite Clark Gable in the 1947 classic. Carrying on into the early 1950s, she starred in the classic King Solomon's Mines and Quo Vadis. Both films cemented her place as a star. She also starred in the 1956 classic The King and I alongside Yul Brynner. In this film, she played the British schoolteacher Anna Leon Owens in an iconic musical performance that earned her widespread acclaim. Kerr received 6 Academy Award nominations for Best Actress throughout her career, including for her roles in Heaven Knows, Mr. Allison, Separate Tables, and The Sundowners. Although she never won a competitive Oscar, she was awarded an honorary Academy Award in 1994 for her lifetime achievement and contributions to cinema. Despite this success, her career did slow down. It seems evident in how she transitioned away from film to focus more on stage and television work. As the 1960s progressed, Kerr grew increasingly dissatisfied with the types of roles available to women in Hollywood. Rather than retire completely, Kerr opted to pursue work that interested her more personally and creatively. After the 1960s, Kerr became highly selective in her roles. She took on fewer projects, and her on-screen appearances became less frequent. Ultimately, she only went for roles that suited her. We believe this reflects a strong desire for creative fulfillment rather than mainstream fame. By the late 1980s, Kerr faced health issues, including Parkinson's disease, which affected her ability to work. This caused her to formally retire sometime in 1986. So, which of these actors do you remember? Do share your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button. You also can't miss the next video on screen.